Mhm. So, hi everyone, and welcome to the first session of long-form writing laboratory with Liza Featherstone and Cécile Malaspina. This hands-on writing lab is the first collaboration between Liza Featherstone, a journalism professor and a columnist for Jacobin and the New Republic, and the philosopher Cécile Malaspina, programmer at the New Center and at the College International de Philosophie. It aims at supporting a writing project over 8 sessions through targeted workshops, prompt writing exercises, and a series of short outside-of-class assignments, culminating in a draft that will have been progressively reviewed by fellow students and the workshop leaders. The lab is designed to address challenges of the writing process from start to finish, from the developing of robust ideas to the formulation of a pitch of proposal. You will practice initiating and sustaining a writing practice, finding structure and flow, as well as pairing self-doubt by defining the scope of your argument and grounding it in evidence. Okay, so that's it for my part, I think.
Thank you so much, Ivan. Welcome everybody. We're really excited to meet you all. So as Ivan said, and as you all know, the aim of the class is to support you in a long-term writing project. Cécile and I both have a lot of experience with long form writing and also with teaching. I'll say a little bit about just a little bit about me. Ivan is right. I'm a columnist for for Jacobin and the New Republic, and I also write for long form articles for The Nation and many other publications, and I've written a few books. I teach at New York University, where during the school year, I do also teach long form writing to graduate journalism students who go on to write books, audio pieces, articles for Harper's, and so forth. Cécile, you want to say a little about you?
Yeah, first of all, I'm doubly excited. I'm really excited to meet you all and find out about your writing projects. And at the New Center, this is not like most other contexts. I'm pretty sure you all come from a vast variety of backgrounds with different types of writing experience, perhaps different lengths of time that you've been writing. Not that that necessarily means much, but I mean, to a certain extent it does, at least in terms of writing routines and so forth. But also the array of backgrounds, the array of approaches to writing. I'm really excited to discover this. And also to be among fellow writers, because it's never a done deal. You never, it's never like you sit down and you just write a book, unless I guess you write I don't know, a bestseller for Amazon or something like this. So the other thing I'm super excited about is to be collaborating with Liza. When I first heard, when Mo first suggested that we should do this together, for a moment I hyperventilated, and then I was like, okay, just sound cool. Like, yeah, sure, we can do this together. So it's just a tremendous honor to be working with you. And also, I think because you work on a very different type of writing, that over the years, I've found that one of the biggest problems with academic and philosophical writing is that there's something about the formality of it that makes you lose track of the simplicity of ideas. On top of that, you have the smokescreen of a language that becomes a kind of insider talk and so forth. So I think this way of writing with the reader in mind, with an editor in mind, with really an output in mind, and looking not so much just at the ultra abstract questions of what is an author, what is a text, but actually what is a sentence? Do you need this adjective? What should your first sentence be like? And just the nitty-gritty of really sitting, both the nitty-gritty, the practical aspect of it, and an attitude too. I think there is something about the difficulty of writing that isn't true for most other practices, and I think this is something we want to address too. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely right. Yeah, and I'm thrilled to be collaborating with Cécile. I have never worked with a philosopher before. It is already so much fun. And also Cecile is brilliant, and if you are trying to explain things that are complicated or theoretical, she will be able to understand them much better than me and help us to render them in lucid form. Um, I also I want to we've touched on this a little bit, but I want Cecile started to talk about this, but I want to say a little bit about one of the premises of this class is that writing is better in community, and so that's not my dog, my neighbors. I can do nothing about it. I'm sorry. Um, the So one of the premises is that writing is better in community, um, and um, and so we hope in this class to support your writing with the community, and we hope that you will take that experience and seek to replicate that in your future writing endeavors. I know I myself have a writing group. We have gathered together for years to to give each other feedback on projects, and it's just incredibly important. I don't think I would have written my last book without such support, and no matter where we are in our writing lives, we really need this. The other dimension of that idea that writing is community is that when we write, we are always entering a conversation. And I would like us to keep this in mind throughout throughout the course, that sometimes when we think of writing, we think of introspection, that writing is something you do all by yourself and it's just you. That's true, but writing is for somebody. You are always writing to somebody, and we want to get in the habit of thinking about who is the reader, who is this for, but we also want to get in the habit of thinking, who are we engaging? What pre-existing conversation are we entering into? Who has already been writing about this? What did they say? And how are we writing in relation to them? So in that vein, you can sometimes think of your if you could sometimes think of your assignments here as more even when you're making, even when the assignment is make a few notes or write write a very speculative draft, or tell us tell us a little bit more about your idea. If you think of the assignments here as more epistolary than diaristic, that is more like a letter than a journal. We just want to get in the habit of thinking about writing as we are literally addressing someone. We have a reader always in mind. So Cecile, should we talk a little about should we give a little more overview?
Yes,
Um,
I just wanted to add something to the the collectivity of writing. That is I think one of the things I'm really surprised, perhaps even, to discover about our collaboration, because my experience of writing in philosophy and academia has been the most solitary experience you can possibly imagine. So coming out of that and
yeah, that's why it needs to be
way of writing
that,
is possible.
right?
I mean,
Yeah.
the most collaborative I've encountered was reading groups or meeting people at conferences, but that's not at all what you're talking about. So this is actually really a very new thing. And just to add, if you like, the theoretical aspect to that, something that
Yes,
if
please.
we get round to it towards the last sessions, I wanted to also introduce some texts and think about the politics of citations, the problems of gender, race, class, and also the role of AI in relation to learning disabilities, reading and writing disabilities. I've never met as many left-handed people as in philosophy. I have never met such a concentration of dyslexic people reading the world's most difficult texts. I think reading Fichte, for example, or Hegel is bloody difficult. So that's not where you would find, where you would expect, dyslexic people are pooling, and yet there is something that I'm yet to discover. I'm not talking as an authority on those types of challenges, but I just want to make this also a formal part of thinking about the kinds of communities we engage, the kinds of responsibilities that we have when we cite. For example, my doctoral thesis, I think I cited only one woman, and there's reasons for that. So it's it's something else, a kind of more formal aspect of thinking about who we're writing with and for.
Yeah,
if you'd like me to say something about the structure of the next few sessions, and then we can perhaps say what we're going to do today.
Sure. Well, I think we'll be starting with we'll be really starting with the concept of what makes an idea good, and how we move from sort of topic or notion to idea. We realize some of you are going to be at different phases in that process, but everybody can always refine your ideas a bit more. And throughout the class, we'll be using prompt writing exercises, workshops, group activities, outside of class assignments. We'll be working a lot on identifying an audience, thinking about an institutional home for your writing. Where does it live in the world? Not because we expect you to publish within the time span of this class, but because, again, that's such an important way of beginning to think about what conversations your writing is entering. We will be talking about why we write, what is evidence, what is persuasion, how and just as a few, just to talk a little bit, you have the overall outline of the course, but next session we will be talking about persuasive pitching, and we'll talk a little bit later about the assignment that we want you to bring for that. Session 3 is called "Who Do You Think You Are?" Cécile, you want to say a little bit about that?
Yeah, no, I think that is the other side of the coin of citation politics, which is that if you are statistically less likely to be an author, a published author and a translated published author, you are statistically much more likely to be battling with the cognitive load of self-checking, very likely some form of imposter syndrome, and yeah, these are eminently social situations, factors, syndromes, which don't exclude the fact that we have individual histories and dispositions. But yeah, I think certainly if you have an unusual background in coming to writing and an unusual path through writing and disciplines, in the sense that perhaps you're not disciplined by your discipline and sticking to a kind of small area of expertise in which you become the world-renowned authority and nobody even knows what you're talking about, then yeah, most likely there's going to be some form of amplification of what it is that makes writing so difficult on top of all the practical issues.
Yeah, thank you. Well said. And so session 4, we will be talking about arguments and evidence, and the kinds of structures that can really hold our arguments, and also what what is evidence, and how do we use different kinds of evidence. Week 5, we will be is called Writing as Communication. Of course, we will be always talking about writing as communication, but we have we will have some specific ways that we delve into that theme in week 5. Session 6, you will have a draft of your final project, and then the last session is rewriting, or the second to last session is rewriting, sorry, and the final is a kind of debrief. Now, when we say final project, we don't. If you have come here for help on your book that is in process, we don't expect you to write your whole book in 8 weeks. We realize that's a tall order, and in any case, it would be hard for us to read the whole book and give you the feedback that you deserve. If you have come here to work on a book, that is fantastic, but we ask that you think of a manageable chunk of that book that you can aim to execute and complete in this time, and we are excited to help you make progress on that. But yeah, just keep in mind, if your project that you're working on is very long form, it may not be able to be completed in this time. We recommend the scope be about 2,500 words. Which and then if that's a film or audio project, that would be more like 10 or 20 minutes. And that's just to make the best use of feedback from your fellow students and from us. Not to say you cannot be working on a project that is longer than that. We're very excited to support your longer project, but just think about how you what piece of that you can break off that is manageable to execute in this form.
And if I may perhaps just add to this also, that is manageable for us to read, and for you when you start reading each other, so that it's probably less feasible to be writing, to be assessing each other's work if it's 50,000 words. And
yeah.
keep that in mind as well, because we're also
exactly. Yeah, we're very excited if you're writing something really big, but we have to think about what's realistic for everyone in this room to be able to bring our best feedback to it. Okay. Have we forgotten anything we should add in this introduction?
Nothing major, I think, except that perhaps we can say a few words about how we're going to run the session today, and
yes,
maybe in anticipation also give you a little heads up about what we would like you to be doing for in between this and next session, so as in preparation for next session.
Yeah, actually, I'd like to add, speaking of that, you'll notice that there are some nice long gaps in between class sessions, in between the meetings of this workshop. There is an important reason for that, which is that you are working on your project. So at the end of each session, we will give you an assignment that is appropriate for that length of time. So the meeting of our next class is pretty soon. So we will be appropriately giving you a somewhat short assignment. So you'll notice that some of the gaps are 2 or 3 weeks. And in those gaps, you'll have much longer assignments to work on, and you will be expected to do much more with that time. I think I'd like to, I think I'd like it if we explained the homework at the end of this
Okay.
class, because it really builds on what we're going to be doing in class, you know? I think that what we're asking you to do for next time will make more sense after you've done this. Um, so for this class time, we're going to I know you all have a lot of questions. Hang on to your questions. Write them down. We will have time for questions in the last hour of class. But for right now, we'd really like to both get to know you and jump right in with writing. And so to that end, we'd like you to take the time to um, write an explanation of the long form project that you're working on in this class. The audience, 'cause we're always thinking about audience, the audience is Cécile and myself, and also your fellow workshoppers. So think about that's your audience. Tell us what the project is. You can tell us a little bit about why and how you came to this project. How does it build on your earlier work, or what experiences led you to this project? But most importantly, what is it? What is the project? And how you are hoping that this workshop will support your project. Do you have, in addition to completing the project, it's a version or a excerpt or the project itself, do you also have specific goals for this class in terms of skills that you would like to work on, specific kinds of support that you would like to get with this project? So if you could take the time right now. We are going to have a writing break in which you will write on these two questions. What is your project and why? And what do you hope to get out of this workshop? And then we will reconvene in Cécile, what did we say? Half an hour?
Yep, we said
Yeah.
half an hour.
Yes, we will reconvene in half an hour, and we will share what you wrote.
So perhaps just to say, in order for you to frame your writing and understand why you have, relatively speaking, so much time, because this isn't like, when we usually do introductions in the seminar, we say, oh, this is my background, I'm kind of interested in these topics. So you have 30 minutes to think about it and write it, but only 3 minutes to present it, because we're 30, in theory, 34 people. I think 36 people are in the group, of which 3 is us, the organizer, and yeah, so that's an awful lot of people. So we need to be able to hear each other, listen to each other, and that's why you have it. This is, I guess, it's harder to formulate a problem well
Yeah.
if you present in 3 minutes time.
Yes, this is part of the challenge of the assignment. And you will and if you're a very productive writer, so if we send you off, if you're the kind of person who we send you off in half an hour and you write 1,000 words, then just be mindful that you should be selective in what you read or present from that when we go around.
I don't know if it's just me, everyone is frozen.
Oh,
Help.
you are frozen,
It
but
feels like the Truman Show.
But I can hear you.
Oh, I
Yes.
lost I lost you all for a second.
Yeah.
I skipped a beat. What I wanted to say about something that you present in 3 minutes, bear in mind you want to tell us what you want and need out of the workshop. A tiny little bit about why your project matters to you, how you got to it. And so it's not that you have to speak super fast and say lots of things. It's rather an exercise in understanding the crucible and turning point, the thing that drives the engine that makes your writing tick. Basically, it's the thing, the problem that is at the top of the food chain that hierarchizes and orders all the other problems.
Yes, exactly.
Put a little bit of
I'm also just dropping in the chat the essential questions for those that, you know, sometimes we process information in different ways, some out loud, some written. But I just wrote the essential in a little message in the chat. Okay, any quick question? I'd ask you to save general questions about the class for the end, but does anyone have a specific question on what we're asking you to do right now? If you do, please raise your Zoom hand. Okay, we will see you in half an hour.
Welcome back.
All right. Great to see you again, everyone. So let's jump right in. Yeah, again, be mindful that we need to hear from everybody. You know, don't take longer than 3 minutes with your explanation, but please share. Let's start with
If it's okay,
yeah.
just we are so many, so if you know, we have to keep a check on the time for everyone so that everyone gets a chance to speak. So after 2 minutes, I'll give you a little sign. So just keep me on your screen just for now. That you'll have a minute left or so.
I'm active in a union in my other job, and when in our union meetings we have a little after 2 minutes we have this feature that makes a crazy noise and plays music to enforce that no one must speak longer than 2 minutes. People hate it. Anyway, it's effective but terrible. All right. Who is someone eager to go first, either because they're very excited to share or because they're nervous and want to get it over with?
Can I ask actually, because just to make sure that we get through everyone, I don't know if the screen looks the same for everyone. So I've got at the top next to you, Lisa, and then there's Sylvie Fortune. Does the screen look the same for everyone?
The screen looks that way to me too.
And then Peggy Bloomer, and then Gabby, and then Daria. Because if it does, and it doesn't all kind of scramble when people start talking, then I think it might be a good way to just go down the screen like that. I'm just eager. I'm
Okay,
just
so it's not to lose track of anybody.
Yeah, that we don't
Okay.
lose someone along the way.
Sorry.
Would that be okay? Unless someone is actually very eager to start and wants to get it off their chest.
Sorry, I just don't see the screen in the way that you do, but yeah.
Yeah, okay. So your screen looks different. So why don't we just start with this? Oh my God, this is, yeah. Let's try. And if it doesn't work, we'll have to improvise and just make sure nobody gets left behind.
Yeah, we won't leave anyone behind. We'll get to everybody. Sylvie?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Okay, I'll jump right in. I'm here to get to work on an experimental book project that grows out of and extends my curatorial practice. I'm here because I feel the intense need to recalibrate and open up my writing, to unsettle it, to make it more speculative, to make it reflect my curatorial methodology instead of conforming to institutional expectations. I'm also here because I've been unable to do it alone. I need support, guidance, deadlines, and perhaps a little bit scared. My hope for this book is that it will sit in the literature section, in the art section, and in the theory section. An experimental novel, an art theory book, and an example of an emerging field, which I just call curatorial writing. I'm thinking of the book as an interloping curatorial writing experiment in 5 chapters and several interludes. And the book itself should enact hospitality. The book explores the intersections of hospitality with the environment, that's 1 chapter, the body, economics, language, translation, ventriloquy, and migration. The interludes would be diaristic, flash fiction, micro reviews of works I encounter either in studios or in the public during the writing. All of these encounters that kind of challenge my thinking. So it kind of would be a time capsule in some way. And I don't know if, I think I'll leave it at that and I can dig further later. Thank you.
Amazing. Yes, you made very good use of your 3 minutes. That was very rich. Thank you, Sylvie.
Yeah, fascinating. Thank you. Yeah, I have so many questions, but are really interesting, and I'm excited for it. Yeah, just something to not answer but to think about is that phrase, the book enacts hospitality. I'm so intrigued by that, and yeah, just something to think more about, and for us all to marinate in a bit, and for you to think more about too.
Also, what kinds of publishing venues you have in mind, or what types of publishing houses? I have one in mind that I'll share with you later, but yeah, we'll talk more, but this is amazing. Thank you. I see Peggy next.
Hi, how are you?
Hi again, Peggy.
Hi, and as always, I have a
Again.
huge topic, but I'm going to try to focus it on something, okay? So currently I have a research grant at the university that I'm at, and I need to do a project with students. That is a short documentary with a printed piece and hosting some conversations with local neighborhood groups. And we're going to have this happen in some place called the New Haven Institute Library. And it's going to be about New Haven as a livable city. So as part of this grant, I really need to do a presentation in the spring of 2025 to the state agency, telling them what I did with this money and with my students, why they should ever give me more money again. And I would like to present at the Lesbian Livable Cities Conference by AMPS in 2025, but I haven't even done the abstract yet for that. So that's up. So I always do things because of personal interests. And so I drive a lot going back and forth to classes. I live in Connecticut, which if anybody knows Connecticut, we have Interstate 95, which is this gigantic highway that was created by monies from Eisenhower. That was federal money. There were many unintended consequences of this. And this went across, I found out this happened in the whole country. How this affected every city in the country is different because they based this on something called the Hoke maps, which is how they gave money out to people for the 30-year mortgages, which we still live with today. And what they did was they went in and they just demolished parts of cities, usually getting rid of either indigent people, immigrants, or Blacks, and they changed the populations within the cities. So it's different. In New Haven, they got rid of all the immigrants, so it made the city much more a Black city than the predominantly owned by Yale University, which puts it as a white-Black combination with lots of interesting things happening. Recently, during the pandemic, there was a ton of building going on in the US, which you may or may not notice when you're sitting in that traffic jam at the interstate near you. It will say, this is brought to you by the bipartisan urban infrastructure, right? So you can look and think about, oh, this is what my government is doing. But another thing they did is they've given money called Reconnecting Neighborhoods to these cities that have been torn apart. And this is 200 cities in the country, mainly on the East Coast, but it goes across the whole country. they're reconnecting neighborhoods. In New Haven, what has been a wasteland since the 70s because of the riots now has parking lots on it. It has a pharmaceutical structure in it and luxury housing, which I don't know how it connects it to Black neighborhoods that they're talking about. This is what I would like to focus on. And leave it at 250 words. I'm done. You know how I'm probably going to write 70,000 words, but I'll try to get it down. Okay.
Oh, this is an amazing project, Peggy. And because I know some of your writing and thinking already, I'm very excited about it. One of my first trips to the United States, I mean, my real first trip to the United States quite recently was to New Orleans. And so I was shown the bridge that kind of cuts across the city and has done exactly, I can't remember the names of the architects and urban planners involved, but I think it was put to me in very much the way that you're describing this urbanization project. So it's got huge political and ethical stakes. This is a big project.
Yeah, but I'm going to try to keep it small and just about New Haven. But I went to New Orleans during the pandemic to meet some people. I'd never been to New Orleans. And what really surprised me when I drove into the city is how it looks just like New York City, as far as what they've done with going through the neighborhoods and hooking the bridges up. It's like sort of the same thing. It's like deja vu. And, you know, New York really went through great areas and disconnected neighborhoods. And I'll be quiet. But you know, and
amazing.
You know, and I am teaching a lot of classes. I don't know how I'm writing this. I'm not a fast writer. I lock myself in a room, sit in my bed and write.
I love it, Peggy. And I actually, just on a personal note, I spend a lot of time on I-95 because I live in New York and I visit my father a lot in Massachusetts. So it's it's really nice to have something interesting to think about in relation to that horrible roadway, which I really hate. So yeah, very interesting. And just a quick question is you have students already working on this research?
I have the grant over the summer. I have to choose them. I start classes next week. I work in an art and design project, which seems sort of like maybe not the best match for the writing, but that doesn't seem to, I don't really have a graphic design or an art degree. I have an English degree, a philosophy degree. So I just do whatever
Sure.
I'm interested in and somehow find other things to do with it. So yes, but I have to be done in the spring and report back as to what I've done.
Okay, yeah.
We'll have something by then for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
On my screen, Leah is next.
Okay, good. Whoever is.
All right.
So yeah, hi, I'm Leah. So I come from a designer background, so I'm trying to answer questions more with material solutions, so not really with words. So writing is not really my forte. But in my curriculum as an architect, theory and philosophy have really drawn me to writing because they relate with my drive for more conceptual and speculative ideas. And somehow reading and writing became important mediums for me to expand. And my writings are intimately tied with my ongoing research about biopolitics, trying to understand like power from a theoretical and also psychological perspective. And yeah, at the moment it's more like baby steps. I mainly write for myself, but I somehow hope to spread my writings in my community in Berlin. I have friends who are also in journal, and we also have groups and share our writings. So that is if I have to think about these questions of for who. It would literally be for friends. And the kind of questions that I have with about writing or the doubts that I really hope to somehow tackle in the class, I think it would be that writing is quite heavy, I think because of academic language and the background that I have in theory. So I sometimes almost find it a bit boring. So I have questions about accessibility in writing and academic language and elitism and all these things. I think also a question of synthesis, like how to close doors, like how to keep a topic concise. I think that's very difficult. So I think it's also related with question of precision, like how to actually choose a topic and like stick to it. And I think I also have questions about translations, because when we do research, if we are not like from an English native background, like terms also get lost. And I think there's this question of like, yeah, like translation and this process of back and forth between different languages.
Yeah.
And I think the last thing I really want to speak also is maybe about like vulnerability, like how to deal with maybe like imposter syndrome, like especially if you don't have a writing background. As I found like writing like very exposing, and also like wondered, you know, like how to deal with these questions.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, that's it.
These are such wonderful questions and wonderful goals, Leah. I just quickly wanted to zero in on, and we will be delving into all of these things. You've said that really well. I just wonder, your project is about biopolitics. Is
Yeah.
is there some particular argument or idea that you're exploring there?
The latest research that I done was mainly about like architecture and hospitals and how they somehow condition bodies. So there's a lot of writing from Foucault about this, and things get quite theoretical. But it's more like an ongoing question, and it's not like I have like a deadline or you know like a
Yeah.
that like framework. But I think this class will help to do that. So
I think so too. Great.
Awesome. I have lots to say, but we'll talk more a little bit later. But yeah, many the triangulations of it, I think, is the one thing I will say though, and I've got my timer here, so I know I've got 1 minute and 10 seconds to say it, is that I work with diagramming a lot with the Noise Research Union. And that I have found recently in a tutorial with one of the other seminar students who totally blew my mind, because the way the designers think is actually incredibly suitable to philosophical thinking. So once you can break through this kind of sound barrier of neologisms and the boringness of it, there is something about the plumbing of ideas that designers understand often better than people who are trained in philosophy and who think abstractly and textually. So that's something perhaps just to encourage you to think that that's a real strength that you're bringing to writing.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I've observed the same thing. So interesting.
Yeah.
If we have a note from Swati, they have to leave at 11. So maybe we skip to that person and then return to the queue.
Yeah. Swati, do you want to start? Go ahead. Did we pronounce your name right? Jain? Swati Jain?
They're saying yes, but I don't hear them.
I don't have access to audio. Oh, that is going to
Oh
be
no.
Well, why don't you post the text that you've written in the chat and I'll read it out. And we'll try and get the news center to figure out what's wrong with your audio in the meantime. Do you want to do that? Is Swati your first name or Jain? I hope I'm not butchering the pronunciation of that. I think we're having a little problem here with the connection maybe as well.
Maybe we go back to the it will, let's see. Maybe we go back to the queue because I'm not sure they're hearing these directions. Oh, yes, actually, they're saying yes. They're saying yes. Give me 1 second, says Swati.
Okay.
Sorry.
Ivan, is it possible for you to check if it's something to do with how they're registered in the seminar, maybe as only auditing or something like this?
Yeah, I'm trying. I'll check it.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ivan.
Okay.
Okay, we have a text.
Sorry, just to check, Swati, is that your first name or Jain? And is the pronunciation okay?
Yes.
Swati, okay. Do you want me to read it while we're waiting for the audio to work? Yes, okay. So I'll do that now. I have been thinking about different forms of presence and absence, incidentally, in this case, in historical and cultural material histories. The measures in time and space, their displacement for economic and knowledge-based embodiments, the labor in framing them, and through a series of spatial interventions, my attempt is to unmeasure and rewild them by borrowing performative, ritualistic, and craft-based histories from the past, appropriating them to contemporary forms of repair from a feminist decolonial perspective towards invisible futures. Very nice, very close. There's a lot of things I'm interested in. Sorry, the dialogue of my interventions are to highlight.
Sorry, Cecile, I think that we managed to connect Swati.
Oh, cool. Then I think you should just start again.
Yeah.
Hi, sorry. Thank you so much for
Swati.
um, fixing the technical glitch. You can hear me right now?
Yes, welcome.
Awesome, thank you. So my name is Swati Jain, and I'm an architectural designer. I'm based in New York, and writing for me is also like a tool to think through ideas. It's not some, I'm not at all published or anything, but I just like the like writing is just a kind of a beginning of me transferring ideas so I can consolidate them. So I'll just read it and maybe we can, I'd love to get some feedback. I've been thinking about different forms of presence and absence in ecological and cultural material histories, their measures in time and space, their displacement for economic and knowledge based embodiments, the labor in framing them, and through a series of spatial interventions, my attempt is to unmeasure and rewild them by borrowing performative, ritualistic, and craft based histories from the past, appropriating them to contemporary forms of repair from a feminist decolonial perspective towards an indivisible future. The dialogue of my interventions are to highlight the forms in which they are practiced today, recognizing their historical forms of practice and representation, and finding new ways of acknowledging them and this is essentially the intervention where um, I attempt to kind of surgically weave voids and spaces for communities to form new identities and agencies through contemporary forms of technology and reconstitutionalizing of contextual freedoms.
So
So glad you managed to connect back.
Thank you.
yeah, me too.
Can I ask, Swati, is this the forms of presence and absence you're talking about voids and spaces to be filled, voids as opposed to spaces to be filled, or you're talking about people and groups that have no voice, for example, or I'm not 100% sure what the presence and absence refers to.
For me, I think presence is kind of the enriched kind of cultural histories and objects that we live on a day-to-day basis, like things that are designed, and absence are things that have not been designed well, I guess, like that have these kind of um, biases, inherently designed in them. I mean, one of the simplest example I would say is like, for example, car seats are designed for men, right? Like, and then when someone says that, oh, women can't drive, of course they can't. Like, I mean, so all of these kind of design biases that we live on a day-to-day basis, how to kind of reconsider them and kind of just bring them at the forefront, so it becomes like an alive thing that one can engage with rather than something that is like concrete and in culture in a way.
Swati, this is so cool. I love this so much, and I think that some the I think the project here is to write as concretely about this as you speak, because I love what you wrote, though the words are very nice, and I love your sense of play with the words and the theory, but I didn't really understand what you were talking about until you gave that wonderful car seat example. And so I think you are, as a designer and as an architect, so rooted in the concrete, and that is going to be a superpower in your writing when you can when you can tap into that. Yeah, because
Yeah,
as written, this is abstract, but you have such a concrete sense of what you are really talking about. And so yeah, love I love this. Yeah, I think this is a real goal here.
also, this is amazing because like this car seat example is one example, but I've also been looking at artifacts in museums and
Mm,
how they are kind of borrowed from like a certain history, while they're practiced in the global south, in India for example, in a very particular way, but like when they move to western institutions, like they're flattened in a way. So how
mm.
can one kind of unravel all of the rich kind of histories, and in what kind of technological ways can one attempt or begin to design for that? So I
Yeah.
mean, there are these layers that I think I
Thank,
need to figure out a way to talk about them.
thank you so much, Swati. That's awesome. So sorry to be hurrying along, but because just the sheer volume of people who signed up to this workshop, it literally, if we take the double of 3 minutes, then we'll be here for 4 hours.
I know. Yeah,
So
fantastic.
sorry about that, but yeah, so super exciting.
Yeah.
Really looking forward to what comes next. So Lisa, I'll let you go on with who's next on your screen. Oh, we asked was it Leah earlier? And then no, Leah already talked.
We heard from Leah. Gabby is next.
Oh, great. Hi again, Gabby. So good to see you again.
Hi. Yeah, same. Okay, so I'll read a little bit, but I'll also try not to improvise too much. So I've been an art writer and critic for about 10 years now, and I do believe I got like atrophied by the genre, and specifically like the repetition of the form. Like I feel like I'm really good and very used to writing reviews, which are about 600 words, and I also find slightly longer art related articles very easy, around like the 1200 mark. Like I have like a very sort of like mechanic way of putting those together at this point. But then in like 2019, 2020, I was very burnt out. I feel like I was in like this hamster wheel of deadlines, where I only had like 1 or 2 weeks maximum to think through an idea. I would say my writing practice then was very consistent but disjointed, like jumping from one topic to the next and unable to like meaningfully connect them. So that's the reason I enrolled at a master's program. And the essays there, which were around 3,000 words, I feel were not like harder to do, but they were really a lot harder to pitch and structure for me. A bit of like what Leah said, like I sort of like tend to think through them as I'm writing them. So my thesis, because it was like a longer project that was like socialized with my tutors and very seriously hardcore structured, I found that a lot easier to do than these like middle of the length projects around 2500 to 300 mark. Essentially, my goal is I would really want to build like a constant and enjoyable practice. I feel like I do constantly get these ideas for essays in which I'm connecting 3 or 4 concepts that were spinning in my mind, and then I'll be like, oh, eureka moment, and write it down, and then like completely forget about them, like never look at them again. So I want to like what is making my writing turn right now is like I want to establish this like meaningful practice in which I document these connections between what I'm reading right now, what I'm seeing in art, and the world around me in a way. I read Gary Indiana say that he takes notes all the time and then just sits down for hours a few times a week to put it all together in an essay. And that's like this huge neon sign in my head that I'm like not doing that enough. I like think about it constantly, and I'm like, I'm not sitting that enough. I'm not putting out an essay every week. Like, so essentially my goal for this seminar is to have this more continuous, like spatially, but also like temporally writing practice where I can like put together these things. I'm currently in a PhD too, so I have to give a talk that would be around 3,000 words, like at the end of next year. So I would like to sort of work on that. Okay, I'm almost done. I also just started a art criticism magazine with my friends here in Mexico City, and I would also love to get like better tools to be like a better editor as well. Um, and yeah, also this essentially is that I'm really bad at pitching essays. Like I've never managed to do that, like jump. Like I have published some essays, but I feel like I have like very bad record on pitching them because I just don't know what I'm gonna do technically until I'm actually doing them. But yeah, that's it. Sorry.
No, awesome. I give you all a kind of little sign so that you know you have a minute left. It's perfect. Perfect timing. I have something to say, but do you want to go first? But we have to be we have to also be very disciplined and quick, Liza and I.
Just fantastic. I think you've named really well the challenges you're facing. I actually I've been a freelance writer for years, and I identify with so many of the things you said, like especially the sort of way that you master certain lengths and genres over time, but then that can leave you under equipped for for sort of structuring like longer or more ambitious things. So like I just find that all very relatable, and these are exactly the sorts of challenges that we want to address in this class. But I do have a quick question, which is, what is your talk about? The talk that you're aiming.
It's like I'm on the second semester, so by the end of our third semester, we're supposed to give like an intro of our PhD project. Essentially, my PhD project, this is the way I found to put it in a tweet. It's like a pyramid with like where like contemporary art is at the top, and then at the bottom it's fashion, subjectivity, and the commodity form, essentially. So I need to give an introduction, and it's like where you're at. But I would like it to be a proper essay that I could possibly maybe pitch to a magazine as well. Like I would want it to have that form. So it's like enjoyable as a talk and as like a more finished idea if possible.
Right. Great. Okay.
Awesome. Thank you very much. We'll discuss more later, but I think we need to move on to the next person.
All right. And I have from my point of view, the next person is Arnab.
I'm so happy to see so many faces I already know.
Yes, Cecile. Actually, first I would like to apologize to Cecile because I couldn't keep the date due to a lot of the courses I've taken at the new center and also at GCS. So I will be submitting like very soon, like a lot of assignments are there and papers. But at this moment, the project, the long form project that I would like to work on and actually like complete is my erstwhile preemptively aborted MPhil dissertation, which was cut short due to the this was my erstwhile university, Jacobin University administration, reducing the research period from maximum of 2 years to one of 5 months. Through the project titled Esoteric, Metaphysical and Uncanny Visions of Time and the Self, a critical reading of disruptive temporalities and fractured selves in Mehring, Hoffman, and Borges with Benjamin and Freud. I endeavored to read both comparatively and critically select works of the Austrian novelist Gustav Mehring, of the writer of Dark Romanticism in Germany, E.T.A. Hoffman, and of the Argentinian writer Jorge Luis Borges, for unique visions of time and the self, as viewed through the theoretical foci of the Frankfurt School philosophers, sociologist, and theorist Walter Benjamin, and those of the father of psychoanalysis, Sigmund Freud. The stakes of the thesis of the project lie in the epistemic insights to be acquired about representations of time and the self during the European cycle across multiple disciplines, from literary discourse and philosophy to Western esotericism and psychoanalysis. The academic value of such insights lies in a better understanding of the European cycle and how entangled temporalities and selves were represented across discourses in a time of the formation of the disciplines. What I intend to receive from this workshop are insights on how to complete the project. Although much of it is already written till about 26,000 words, much also remains to be said, and how to draw a line pragmatically with precision and consciousness, which unfortunately I am not that good at. I also intend to publish this as a monograph by next year. At the same time, I hope to publish the thesis of my second MA in philosophy, which I'm undertaking presently with GCS. Looking forward to the classes with you, Cecile and Liza. Thank you so much.
Me too, very much. Yeah, it's an honor for me to have people from the previous seminars joining here again, because I've had the pleasure and honor of knowing some aspects of your work already. So I know what I'm getting into a little bit, but not enough not to be totally curious how it continues. I want season 2, if you like, or 3, whatever. But yeah, this drawing a line is I think when the writing starts. But we'll talk about this more. But I think it's some writers, as an editor, you'll meet some writers who are very nervous about changing what they've written, and especially about cutting or leaving things out. So finding the right reasons to leave things for another time rather than saying they're not useful, so that you know, you prioritize, if you like, in time what goes together now and what needs more space in the future for a kind of follow-on project. That's something that will help us find pleasure in ruthlessness, and finding that the cutting is actually is when is a really substantial part of the writing itself.
Absolutely.
And at the same time, not feel that you're amputating anything, so that whatever negation is going on here is almost in a Hegelian sense, a kind of Aufhebung is something that you keep for later.
Absolutely, Cecile.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Yes, I spent the last week at my dad's house, much of which I was helping him dead-end his roses in the garden, and it can feel so brutal, right, to cut off the roses and the rose hips, but that's when you get that allows the bush to fully flower and for longer, and writing is absolutely the same way. Antonella has to go as well, so I think we'll have that person go next. Hi, Antonella.
Hi, can you hear me well?
Yes.
Oh, perfect. Thank you so much for letting me go now. And sorry for disrupting the schedule. So my project is actually already kind of done. It's my master thesis, and I graduated 4 or 5 months ago in visual arts and curatorial studies. But now, when I like recovered from writing it, I wish to revisit it and see how I can, let's say, make it better, maybe alter some parts or reorganize them in order to maybe get published, maybe not the whole thesis, but maybe like just an article, chapter, or some interviews I've done. And it basically deals with how artists and culture workers today deal with using English as second-hand speakers. And this kind of interest in language starts from, let's say, local particular issues. Well, they aren't real issues, they're more like fabricated issues we have in the region of ex-Yugoslavia, and I come from Croatia, so that's kind of my interest here. But it then expands to this idea of how there is also a lot of ambiguity in big colonial languages we are using today on everyday basis. And I know, like here in the region, it's been dealt with in the 90s, and still in to this artwork that like an artist who doesn't speak English is no artist. Then maybe on the global level, it's been done in 2010s, 2013, when there was this international art English thing. And basically, I think it can be revisited. And the form that I like, thank you, is like short essays, interviews, mix of kind of conversational with a lot of academic references. And I need more help with how to get it out there, how to like pitch it to magazines, how to find the right magazine, the right journal, as someone who doesn't have much experience. And that's it, more or less. Thank you. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Antonella.
Yeah, fascinating. Fascinating.
Yeah, the language is just a quick virtual hands up. Whose native language is English? So no, I mean, like you have to do the on-screen thing so I can see how many you are, because otherwise I have to go through several screens. Right. What is that? We've got, can you actually see that somewhere? Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. Right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Wait, how does this screen thingy work? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Is that right?
Yeah, so at any rate, we're a real minority. It's a real minority of first English as first language.
I have a second question. Of those of you who raised their hands, how many of you feel that you have regional accents or dialects that you need to handle or somehow be conscious of or aware of in the environment in which you use your language for writing? No. Yeah, 1, 2. Interesting. I wonder to what extent that's also country specific, but yeah, that's interesting. There's a whole politics, also citation politics, impact factor politics around the use of English, and the kinds of people who end up in decision-making positions about who gets published and who gets cited, and so who then gets cited and so forth. That is not at all anodyne, and yeah, reclaiming our territory here to the extent that many of us will be inhabiting this kind of between languages is definitely a really charged topic. I'm really glad you're going to be working on this, Antonella. And yeah, we'll deal also with the more practical aspects, pitching and so forth. In fact, you'll see. But
Yeah,
I'm the worst at following my own guidance. So
no, it's next.
next
In
question,
fact, it's
sorry.
our next assignment. So next up, Alice.
Hi. Yeah. Okay. So basically, I'm trying to write something in between like art writing and like theory fiction, and I have a background in visual culture, and I study like in UK, and now I'm back in Italy. So it's a very different context, especially for contemporary art. And my research is, give me a second, is inspired by this I don't know if you can see it, but these folk dresses, this is my
Oh,
grandma.
wow. Yeah.
Really funny because these dresses is named pacchiana, and in contemporary Italian now it means tacky or vulgar or cheap. So I want to, and because it was used from women in South Italy, from working class. So it was like, I got so interested, like I just kind of found out this story talking to my grandma, and I was like I really want to reclaim the pacchiana and the tackiness of it.
Yeah.
So yeah, like my idea is more to use it as a, like even beyond Italy and this kind of like very specific context, to look at this kind of like excessiveness or like female or like camp aesthetic, and also how like it relate to different contexts of like political taste and fashion, and yeah, also like related to femininity or queerness. And yeah, part of this idea is also to write a love letter as a part of a text, which is something I've been doing before. And the idea is to write to Dalida, which is this Cairo, French, Italian, originally from the same region of my grandma. So the idea is also to kind of play about these topics of like longing and displacement, and like, yeah, I don't know if it makes sense in 1 minute. But yeah.
What kind of format of writing are you envisaging?
So my idea is to do a publication out of it. So yeah, I have like, it would be kind of the intro or the opening text of this publication, and the only thing I will be writing. So the idea is to then invite different artists and visual and writing contribution on these topics. But yeah.
So a book length feature, but that you would be introducing.
Yeah, no, I mean, just like yeah, the opening essay, let's say.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
I just want to say I love this focus on the specific type of dress, and that and I love that photo, and the whole project of reclaiming this style of working class dress, and the kind of and the idea and sort of identity going along with it. And yeah, I would, there's going to be a lot more to say throughout the course, but I think I would encourage you to stay. I know what you mean about going beyond Italy, because these concepts of tackiness and class are cross-cultural, of course, but I would actually stay as rooted in the specific and the story of that style of dress and your grandmother as much as possible, because I think that there's just so much there in that specificity.
I also, yeah, I have the same feeling. I think that's going to make a splash, and at the point that you're trying to, I think that there's going to be a greater lasting effect of this contribution, and of disclosing also an audience and readership that might not normally look at writing, for example, but that would be drawn to it because it's that part of the history that you're dealing with.
Yeah, so great. Let's see. Cécile, is there, you are, as a veteran of the new center, is this usually when we would give them a 10-minute break, as it's about halfway?
You're right. We started at, what was 3 o'clock for me, 4, 5, we're a bit more than halfway through. So I would say we break now and continue at 5 past, quite sharp, if that's okay. And so we have, 8 minutes, and I hope that's okay to go and grab a coffee and a tea and catch a breath and think some more if you're still waiting to speak.
Okay.
How many more people? I need someone to help me with the maths.
No, don't worry about it.
No?
Right. Let's we will reconvene at 5 past the hour. right?
Cool.
Yes.
See you in a little bit.
Okay. Uh, yes, welcome back, everybody. Jumping right in. I see on my screen, I have Gabriel up next.
Hello, everyone. I'll just read through what I read. The project is a piece of writing that answered the question, how do I become a jaguar? The question was posed a year ago by a friend of mine when we were talking about perspectivism and Prometheanism and the possibilities of becoming allies in the world projects of the indigenous people in Brazil. So in Brazil, we do have like indigenous peoples. From a philosophical anthropological sense, they are animists, and they do live in a world that our bodily expressions and affections can turn into animals and so on and back and forth. But she's a white friend. She just poses the real honest question. But okay, how do I become a jaguar? As a serial obstacle on engaging such struggles and to build our lives outside European naturalism and imperial forms of life. And I do think that I have the answer from my dual background as a Brazilian anthropologist that just finished a long doctoral thesis on ethnography of apprenticeship on Chinese diaspora of Brazil. And before that, as a martial artist, as a Kung Fu teacher who is constantly witnessing profound changes in my students who, as they learn how to do the eagle claw or how to twist the body like a dragon or run like a jaguar, they experience profound changes in their personalities and their existential places. And as a writer, however, my goal is to escape from these two backgrounds because I don't want to write a manual of martial arts, neither a dense philosophical investigation on ontologies, but rather something in between that can argue for a possibility of mutation, proposing thinking experiments and daily life exploration that can really transform our recognition of ourselves and the things that surround us. And on a subtext level, the project is how to change the set of presuppositions that we have about what exists or the ontology that we live in, starting with the changeable nature of our body and how it can be very close to a jaguar, a horse, or a bird in a very sensible existential sense. In the seminar, I would like to work on the skills to write with persuasion. I do have a tendency of digression, and I got multiple feedbacks throughout the years that I don't lose my reader, but I do lose my point sometimes. and also, I would like to write feasible projects of books or long essays that can reach broader audience than the academic community, and also gain confidence to write directly in English. Sometimes I have to write in Portuguese and then translate. And I got my last experience on publishing in English was in a very nice academic journal on bodily practice and arts. But I got a feedback from a reviewer that I had a pedestrian English and it hurts. But I don't know what it means. Like I can't understand. I'm still today thinking what it means because he got I got a good feedback on the text, but this was like this. Oh, he has a pedestrian English, and I couldn't understand because I'm not used to the expression, but I felt like it was not nice. So
no, it's not nice. Really not nice.
That's so sadistic. That's such an abusive power of being a reviewer.
Yeah. Well, I will say your framing question for this project is absolutely not pedestrian. How to become a jaguar? You got my attention right away. And I love the specificity of your goals for what to work on as a writer. And yeah, we'll take a look at that pedestrian English. That's really something to flag. But yes, your idea is certainly not pedestrian.
Oh, not at all. And in fact, you talk about persuasion, but I mean, you've pitched this like I want to publish this actually.
I know. I was riveted. I was like, how do I become a jaguar? That sounds great.
No, there's something I need to understand why this works worked so well as a pitch. And yeah, we'll be looking
Yeah.
at it, but I'm so looking forward to it. When I went to New Orleans in April, I met Ana Maria Ochoa, who is a anthropologist of music, and she gave me an article about an indigenous people, but I can't remember exactly where, who have a relationship when they go hunting. It's about doing things right so that if you die, you don't become one of the pigs of the pigs that you're hunting, and how the whole society of humans and the parallel world of the parallel reality of pigs, how that kind of evolves, was utterly fascinating. And the learning for humans how to survive, what kind of virtues and qualities you look for was really extraordinary. So you joining that up with these kung fu experiences, becoming the eagle claw and what it does to you is yeah, that's fascinating. Wow, this is going to be so much fun. Thank you.
So fun. And next up we have Felix.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Sure can.
Okay, my connection's been like but okay. Nice to meet you guys.
So
I think I want to focus on part of what's going to be my final project for the critical philosophy program here. So the piece I actually wrote to apply here was arguing that Finnegan's Wake by James Joyce is a kind of mystical tool or object, maybe just not in a very literal form. Basically, I think the semiotic structure of the novel that has all these puns and malapropisms and neologisms and contradictions I think it has some isomorphism to the way more traditional spiritual and mystical practices function. And I still have more to suck out of this book, even though I'm not as like breathlessly devoted to Joyce as some people are. So I'm really hoping to turn this into a larger project of articulating a sort of maybe phenomenological theory of the mystical experience and a poetics that goes along with it, that kind of straddles religious and more rational or scientific worldviews without really giving superiority to either of them. So there's a lot of other moving parts with this that I've been reading about, the history of the alchemists and Hermeticists and the occult and Kabbalah and all that kind of stuff, and Joyce's medieval and scholastic influences and how those are present in the structure of the work. And I've been reading some older accounts of the sort of mystical experience and some slightly more recent things like William James, and even more recent scientific research that's happened since psychedelic drugs have been decriminalized in a lot of places. And like a lot of contemporary philosophy and stuff as well. But personally, one of the things that brought me to philosophy in general is actual textbook mystical experiences that I've had. And I'm really not, I would say I'm not very superstitious, but these events in my life have really made me take these kind of things more seriously. And I do think there's a positive epistemic quality to them of some kind. And I think there's a lot that they can teach us about the transcendental. And I guess I do believe in some form of divinity, maybe in kind of a Spinozist sort of sense. And so that's all what I'm planning for this final project. But I think maybe it would be in my best interest for just this class to focus on the more historical dimension of it. And for one thing, try to track the development the development of the written word and its relationship to theology and esotericism and things like that, which is obviously a huge thing to get into. But I feel like I could get a lot of really good insight from everybody. I think I'd rather do that over the sort of purely philosophical aspects of the project. And beyond that, I'm really not super comfortable or familiar with like publishing and grant writing and stuff like that. I've only ever published like poetry that I've written. So that is like a big thing I'd want to get out of the class.
I love it.
Wow, yeah, super exciting.
Yeah, very. One question that I have is Felix, is there forgive my ignorance, but is there already a scholarly conversation about the mysticism or spirituality in Finnegan's Wake that you are adding to, or is this really kind of a new is this a new way of reading the work?
I mean, there's a huge, there's a huge, just obsessive body of scholarship on it.
That's
But
what I was guessing. Yeah, yeah.
And Joyce himself wasn't like a particularly spiritual or religious person. He really famously broke with the Catholic Church early in his life and everything. And I think he was mostly just really interested in alchemy and Giordano Bruno and Giambattista Vico and like some of these different people. And but I guess I have a crazier sort of read on it than other things I've read. I haven't found anything that is quite as like I don't know how to describe it, like in quite the same place as what I'm thinking about. Mostly it's like tracking the different references in the book and how they're all related, but like
I think
so if you could say in a sentence, what is your crazier read? Then what is your crazier read? What makes your read crazier?
But I think there's an inherently like mystical sort of perceptual experience that maybe the use of language in this book is even just a prospectus on, like a first attempt at. I think it has to do with disrupting the like discursive structures that exist in your mind, kind of similar to when someone meditates on a Zen koan or something, sort of exhausting your discursive faculties. So yeah, I think it has a lot to do with that. And I think there are some ways that it kind of works a lot like mantras or incantations or different things that people have worked at. And I think it's sort of, I don't know, waiting to get used in this different sort of way and not just have exegesis done on it, if that makes sense.
Okay, that is so cool. Thank you so much. All right.
Yeah, we'll talk more about the philosophy literature intersection, but that's really looking forward to that.
Cool. Yeah.
All right. I have next up Katya. Oh, actually, I'm sorry. I think that I told somebody that they could go right after the break, and I forgot to get right in with that person. So if Katya, if you could hold on.
Sorry, yeah, that was me.
Okay, yes, sorry about that. Go ahead, Matthew.
No worries. Thanks. Happy to be here and appreciate being able to learn from Liza and Cécile. I wrote up like kind of an abstract during the 30 minutes, so I'm just going to read that because I think it falls within the amount of time. So, in our present age, we view knowledge more like information, packets of data transferred or presented via some communicative medium, and which theoretically anyone could encounter and derive some benefit from. However, this way of viewing knowledge ignores the subjective element of the understanding, in which certain ideas or types of information may produce different subjective effects depending on that person's material or subjective position. What sort of knowledge information is depends on what subjects do with information, and this depends on their conceptual paradigms, affects, material concerns, and even what they had for breakfast. The current censorship paradigms, which rely on concepts like misinformation or disinformation, display some awareness of the fact that even true or half-true information can produce deleterious effects depending on the person who sees it or the context in which that information is encountered. What we're rediscovering is something that our ancestors understood very well, and it's why they developed what we now call the esoteric. So the esoteric, in contrast to its opposite, the exoteric, refers to the hidden transmission of teachings from teacher to student. Typically, esoteric insight also involves some immersion into a regime of practice and habits, a community of other subjects, as well as a subjective shift in oneself. All this prepares one to attain an insight which might otherwise have had catastrophic effects on one's life or outlook. In esoteric practice, we move from the realm of knowledge as transfer of data to understanding as the production of an experience. So this project has implications for how we understand learning versus education, even containing an implicit critique of how we currently conduct education within our society. And the question of learning as an experience rather than a delivered product also concerns my long-term project of unlearning what I call school brain in order to relearn how to learn. So school hijacked my motivational epistemic and my identity kind of from a young age. But since reality isn't like school and the mindset inculcated by school obstructs genuine agency in the world, I've been on a quest to deprogram my school brain ever since I graduated from college. So the project I'm working on right now, this one will likely culminate in a book at some point, but I've chosen to focus on some shorter works in the near term to clarify the nature of the project and explore the ideas from multiple different angles. I'll be presenting on a different angle in October, and I'm using this laboratory to develop a different approach where I focus on kind of this question of the esoteric. And I'm especially looking forward to learning from the advice and mindset of experienced writers like Liza and Cécile about how, as well as how to pitch and write in publications that have a broader reach. I write a newsletter online, only have about 150 subscribers, self-published a book, haven't sold a lot, want to find a way to try to get my work into maybe more professional or wide-reaching publications to start getting my name out there a little bit. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew.
I felt that I started really getting interested, and it was really concrete to me when you started talking about school brain and your own experiences, you know, undoing that and unpacking that, and you know, and so yeah, I'd really.
Hi, my name is Peggy Bloomer, and I would like to schedule getting my iron filter looked at.
Hey, Peggy.
Peggy,
Unmute when you're not.
unintentional.
Yep, totally unintentional. Yeah, so Matthew, I was really interested in the in the school brain and the unpacking of that,
Yeah.
and I just noticed it got a lot more concrete when you did speak in the first person, you know, and I'd really
Monday is the worst day of my life.
Oh, wait, Ivan, can you mute Peggy, please? Because she doesn't realize.
Oh yeah, I do, but it unmuted somehow. So yeah, sorry.
Yeah, no worries. Okay, so next up, Katya.
Yeah, thank you. It's very nice to hear about all these amazing projects, especially because today I was, before the seminar, I was thinking, like, should I actually even write, or is there any sense in writing this thing? So this is the project that I've been working since December 2021. And it initially started as a photography project that I was doing. But in these years, it developed into a broader form encompassing photography, but also writing and sound. And the idea behind the writing project is my encounter with termite mounds in northern Senegal that provoked a lot in me, also at a very personal level. And the photographic part was focused on the termite mounds themselves and their environments. So the writing part is a reflection on the encounter from different angles, including interactions with the communities, conversations, contemplation, and exchange. And as a writer and a photographer, I situate myself as a voice and as a lens in this project, bearing in mind my background, so different aspects such as class, race, nationality, gender. And I would like, in this project that right now I imagine more like a book length writing project to combining photography and writing. I would like to build a dialogue between the mounts, the people who live with the mounts, myself, but also with the existing literature, fiction and nonfiction about our joint being in the world, relationality, multiplicity, opacity, fugitivity, our presence and absence in the place, escape from the categories, and in general about more than human. And starting from this encounter with termite mounds, the idea is to develop a reflection on the possibilities of learning from and reflecting with the non-human world, while bringing in my personal experiences and traumas and histories, but also to somehow reflect on how can we learn from and with plants, trees, and their interconnectedness, and develop our sense of being part of the world. I guess I'm done, right?
I'm sorry. Yeah, this
Yeah,
is awesome.
Okay.
Thank you. It's beautiful to see this this different aspects. What did Souleymane Diagne is a Senegalese philosopher I met recently, and he was talking about what happens when you, the word that comes to my mind is dislocate, but in English it means something else. So not dislocate your arm, but when you locate yourself in a different, when you think from a different place, basically. The word will come back to me now. It was just, I couldn't grab it back from working memory. Yeah, and it's interesting that we have projects here overlapping like this with the willingness to move and shift perspective, but also the more than human aspect of thinking it's really interesting.
Yeah, I love this so much. I mean, these are themes I really enjoy thinking about in my own work personally. Relation between humans and other species, and I really am excited about the uniqueness of the focus on the termite mounds and the potential for the interplay between your photos and written narrative. I think this is going to be really cool.
The word I was looking for was decentered, not dislocated.
Decentered, well, that's sort of similar.
So that's interesting for a photographer, I guess, with respect to focus, and for writers as well. What does it mean to have focus in your writing and at the same time practice a perspective that is decentered?
And something to start thinking about too is what will be the relationship between the photos and the writing. Like, is the narrative like a form of like a long form caption, sort of explicating like a narrative or argument that's kind of inherent to the photos, or are the photos kind of an illustration in the sense that the written argument you're making is sort of more prominent? I mean, is there a hierarchy between the photos and the words, or are they complementary? Does one is one kind of subordinate to the other, or are they in conversation on an equal footing? Those are things you really want to think about when you're working in a both words and visual medium. I'm super excited about it. We have Daria has to go, so she is up next.
Hi, very happy to be here. Yeah, I'll just read, I guess. So I'm Daria, I'm a curator and aspiring art historian, and this fall I will embark on a challenging, interesting, and a bit frightening journey, which is a PhD in art history at UCL in London. And although I'm not yet sure of the specificities of the project I will complete in this workshop, I know it will definitely be related to the research that I will be conducting for my thesis and part of this bigger project. In a nutshell, my research focuses on the manner in which women have photographed women in the Middle East, and particularly the region that is today Israel and Palestine in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Although I'm originally from this region, I never expected to focus on local production of art as an art historian. The first step in this trajectory occurred unexpectedly during my first months as an art history MA student, when the first essay that I submitted examined the work of Marie-Lydie Bonfi, who is a photographer who worked in the region and who was unknown, and her husband received all the credit for her work. I became obsessed with the opportunity to shed light on such an important art historical topic, exposing the work of women photographers in the region and examining how they documented local women who were part of various communities and religions. In the PhD, I then look into how such archival imagery informs contemporary women artists from the region. I see this project as addressing issues that are beyond art history and that I see as even more relevant today than ever. Through the history of photography, I wish to examine the relationships between women from different communities, social classes, and political positions that were possible in the days preceding the ethno-nationalist divides and violence that characterizes contemporary life in the region. I hope to emphasize how photographic imagery manifest such relationships and to look into the past in order to imagine a future in which ethno-nationalism is not a predetermined disposition. And this class will be my first attempt to formulate a piece of writing out of the so much I've read on this topic so far. So I think that would be one thing that I'm very interested to engage with and learn from how to take such a big topic and write something that is concise, and also how to make academic writing more engaging and interesting to the reader. And one last thing that I really resonated with what Leah said about vulnerability, both as a writer, a starting writer, young writer, but also because I'm writing about a topic that is very personal. I come from this place, but at the same time is very contested. Everyone has an opinion about, and how to navigate that complexity.
Oh, that is such a beautiful project. I was so excited.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, I absolutely love it too. And I see we have a Peggy in the comments agreeing. This is so interesting. Yeah, we're really going to be excited to work on this together.
Also, the theme that comes back is a vast amount of research and how to carve your way through that and how to develop a narrative that gives a sense of orientation rather than getting lost in the magnitude of material that's available. So I think this is going to come up a lot when we think about ordering concepts in terms of formulating a problem as a result of which naturally follows a hierarchy of other problems and concepts. And once you have that, it becomes a prison, or I don't know if that's the right word, but it becomes a natural way of organizing or pulling forward and pushing back different types of information so that you can have foreground and background without wondering about what is important or not, but rather what is necessary for the formulation of my problem and its elucidation. Something like that. It's going to be awesome. Oh God, this beautiful project.
Yeah,
thank you.
Yep, definitely. Love it. We have Sarush next, as they also had to go. So
hi everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So my project focuses on a critique and recreation of what I call Iranian speculative cosmology. What I mean by this phrase is a philosophical critique of the fundamental concepts that have been.
I don't know if the others can hear you well, but actually, although I hear you loudly, there's noise in the channel, and I can't.
I was afraid. It was like.
Can I just ask if you have a text, if you did write something, even in note form, that you're happy to share?
I have to type it down and so you work with the next person.
Would that be okay? Because then you can still talk, but we can read it at the same time and
Yes.
to help us understand you better. Sorry, the line isn't so good.
Okay. So should we go to the next person while Sarush is doing that?
I would say, if that's okay.
Yeah, good idea. On my screen, next person is Robin.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Sure can.
Okay, great. So I'll just read out. So a confession, I cheated a little bit. I've used a bit of a pitch. I pitched this before with no luck. So I've used this to help write this. So my project is a reported essay which asks the question, do we still need doctors? Which sounds like an odd question. Because when you think about healthcare around the world, it always seems to be in a crisis and there never seems to be enough staff. But we know that training doctors takes time and money, and that's something that governments and patients have a short supply of. When then you look around systems around the world, especially in the West, many are opting to employ associate roles such as physician associates or advanced nurse practitioners who do exactly the same work as doctors. And the result is a turf war between doctors and these associate roles that has been simmering for many years and I think is about to boil over. So doctors say that they're worried about patient safety as their main concern, but actually I think that the thing that worries them is that if an associate or a nurse can do the same work as a doctor at a fraction of the cost, then do we really need doctors at all? And this is the existential crisis that doctors now face. So why I think this is an interesting project? Well, I think from a political perspective, we're looking at a shift in the power dynamics of healthcare, which have been in place for decades, maybe even centuries. Doctors are the ones that give orders. Doctors are the ones that make the most money. Doctors are the ones that make all the decisions. And then from a broadly more philosophical point, I think this is about who has the right to knowledge. So do you need to go to medical school to practice medicine? Well, I think a lot of these roles are proving that you don't. Who has the right to see patients? Do you need to go to medical school to practice medicine? I mean, in certain fields, you don't. You don't need to go to plumbing school to be a plumber, but you don't need to go to law school to practice law. You can become a solicitor with a law conversion degree. So I think there's lots of questions to be asked about who has the right to knowledge and who protects the knowledge. Is there an elitist system in place that tries to keep knowledge for themselves? In terms of what I want to get out of the class, I want to learn to pitch better because I've pitched this article to many outlets with no luck. I've also pitched lots of other articles with no luck. I want to write an article that will reach a wider audience because I do believe I have a voice and I have something to say and I want to be heard. And I want to develop my writing skills further so that I can actually maybe become a semi-professional writer. I'm not a trained journalist, but I want to make it my more than just a side hustle, like a second career, a second life for me. So those are my aims.
Wow, this is such a hot and important topic. Are you based in the UK?
I'm from the UK, but I actually work in Ireland at the moment, in the Republic of Ireland.
All right, is that similar then? Because in the UK, there's definitely a strong push towards using associate doctors and specialized nurses and in fact, even pharmacists to some extent.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting trend because I think when you look at the history of physician associates, it actually was a role that was conceived in the States, and it was to get access to people who couldn't get access to healthcare. So now you're seeing the same thing in the UK. Because a lot of people can't get to see a GP. And I think it's going to happen in Ireland in the next 5 years. And I think it will happen in other parts of the West, rather the Anglosphere. So I think New Zealand and Australia are not there yet. But I think what you're seeing is these countries are thinking that we can't afford to train doctors. So there's this other role that we can adopt. And I think you're seeing a lot of these wealthy Anglosphere countries are moving towards that. So I think it will be a big thing in the UK. It will be set in stone in the UK in the next few years. And I think Ireland South Africa, Australia, New Zealand will follow suit very soon.
Interesting.
So interesting. Yeah, and this is, and I think it's very provocative, but also really concrete the way that you've framed it. I do wonder what you think the answer is. Like, do we need doctors?
I think every pitch I've made of this, I think there will be a role for doctors. I think what people don't like to hear is people want more doctors. They think more doctors is a solution.
Yeah,
And
people
doctors
definitely
want
want
to get doctors want to get paid more. But the need to have someone training for 10 or 15 years, which I kind of did. I mean, I do very specialist work. So there's not a need for very many of my type of doctor. And so I guess what I'm saying is that there is a need for doctors, but actually we probably need fewer, and we need them to be more specialized, which is not what governments want to hear. It's not what patients want to hear. It's not what doctors want to hear, but actually doctors are not independent of the economic model that we live in.
Right.
And I think that's where it's headed.
So interesting.
I think
Okay,
the days of,
really good.
the days of the generalist is over. I think it's, you know, it's a narrower specialism and fewer of us, unfortunately. Yeah.
Yeah, great. Well, you have a very good concrete argument to make here that is that's and its importance speaks for itself. And I think we're going to and luckily we're going to be talking exactly about pitching at the end of the class session, and that will be your first assignment. So very exciting. We have Sarush. Sarush has pasted their explanation in the chat. Cécile, do you think that Sarush should read?
Yes, yeah, he can absolutely read it because we have the text. So if there's any problem with the line not being totally audible, at least we have the text to fall back on. Thank you very much for writing that so quickly. That's
and so everybody, you know, if you're having trouble hearing Sarush, just to follow along with their text in the chat. Okay, go ahead, Sarush.
Sarush, can you hear us? Oh, he's.
But do you want me to read it? I thought that it was like that.
Yeah, if you like, you can read it, or I can read it out for you. But if you like,
I don't want to hurt your ears by my poor connection thing, but I can read it if you want me.
Do you want me to read it out for you?
Yeah, sure. It might be better because of the connection thing. Thank you.
Okay, I'll do my best not to read it more poorly than a bad connection. My project focuses on a critique and recreation of what I call Iranian speculative cosmology. I love it. What is meant by this phrase is a philosophical critique of the fundamental concepts that have been recurrent throughout Iranian ontology. By Iranian ontology, I refer to any philosophical narration about the origins and fates of the cosmos worked out in different forms of speculative reasoning in Iranian philosophy. Speculative cosmology in this sense refers to a philosophical thought about the cosmos that speculates on its own origin, nature. There was a chat movement and I lost the line. Speculative cosmology in this sense refers to a philosophical thought about the cosmos that speculates on its own origin, nature, layers, and fates. This is what we find in ancient Zoroastrian writings, gathered mainly in Avesta and then in the many interpretations and, in fact, recreations of them by Muslim Iranian philosophers. In this sense, I want to discover and reorganize the main ontological and speculative concepts and arrangements in this history. This reorganization is a speculative rebuilding and deconstructing of this cosmology in the form of designing a multiverse. In this workshop, I want to overcome one of my problems in writing a philosophical text. I have been criticized for inconsistency and connecting concepts and ideas in a way that is not easily graspable. I need help with organizing my writing and focusing on a wide array of ideas in a single text, and also with writing smaller chunks of this project in separate parts that can be organized in a meaningful way. Awesome. The combination both of, on the one hand, the kind of hands-on rather, practical aspect of crystallizing from a huge amount of material, and in this case, also a really very long history, crystallizing some ideas that work as a piece of writing and engage the reader in a way that they really know what they're dealing with. So yeah, we'll definitely be working on this. It's a beautiful project, very close to many of my own interests. So I look forward to discovering also the content and history of ideas that you're going to be dealing with. Thank you.
Yeah, I love it too, and I think you've named the writing challenges very precisely, and you're beginning with a really good goals. Next up, I have Antonio.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, sure can.
Okay, so I'll read it because I tend to skip ahead of myself. So this book deals with the intelligence of things, or put differently, with the overlap between embodied and recursive knowledge. Its motivation spawns from questions raised by the growing automation of labor, which no longer is circumscribed to physical tasks, but progressively encompasses creative and design work. Within this horizon, my aim is not to analyze cutting-edge technology, but its opposite. This is a book about craft, or artisanship, which treats this subject from a theoretical point of view. So in a sense, it's a dialogue within existing literature. I guess my main thesis is that craft is a direct way of engaging with matter, and it works as a sort of access to the thing itself. The main thesis is that craft discloses certain characteristics and shows certain paths, which might not be revealed to a detached approach to materiality, which is common in design and architecture today. Questions like, how is craft any different from an abstracted or unengaged mediation of matter? How can the singular characteristics of material inform the process of making? And why should such an influence be desirable? Intend to offer a view on what exteriorized intelligence might mean, and how modeling, diagram making, and thought can be understood as a form of co-creation between the mind and the physical world. So this is the main, like, the project, and then to speak about my kind of background with it. This theoretical urge came from an empirical interest I have in making things since my childhood. And over a year ago, I started a radio show dedicated to this subject, which is called When Thinking is Doing, and is broadcast by the Rubida Collective Monthly. So it might recycle some material for this essay. I guess the main thing I want to get from this workshop is something which both Cécile and Lisa alluded to in the beginning, which might be described as the accessibility of the text. Usually I have a very solipsist practice, and I really write for myself. I really like it because it's rigorous, but it might come across as too hermetic or eccentric. So I'm looking forward to thinking about other people who might read it, as not to lose track of the simplicity of ideas. I usually don't have a problem with self-discipline or with making writing happen. I guess my biggest struggle is to have unknown people in my mind without thinking I am lowering the stakes of the argument or somehow selling out for publicity. So these are the things I would like to work on here.
I really love your goals, Antonio. Those are great and very specific. And I was really speaking of accessibility, I felt what you were saying became so much more accessible to me when you were talking about being a maker yourself and how you had been making things since you know, since you were a kid, and I think you know, think like that personal and hands-on perspective of making things is going to be important, I think, in translating these ideas to an audience. I think this is really going to be I think the power of this work as communication is going to lie in that experience.
There's also something interesting you said that you do, so it's not an issue of discipline or anything like that, and that when you said you do actually enjoy this solipsistic form of writing for yourself, and you made me realize that that's it's like a little bit of a sacrifice when you have to write for others. And in fact, writing doesn't have to be necessarily for others. It is, in my experience from reading students' work, often the case that trying to find a compromise between the two means that the work is not accessible to other readers, but it also loses the margin of play that real experimentation with language affords when you write for yourself, when you really want to do novel things with language. So I think rather than trying to compress these two aspects in writing, which, you know, some people over a career of writing can happen, it's awesome, you know. But one thing that you can do is also hone parallel practices, write two parallel texts, one that is entirely geared towards reading for others on the same topic, if you like, and you could even have two columns as an experiment, for instance, and one in which you make no compromise at all, and the pleasure of working with language that is poetry or borders on poetry, or that depends what kind of form of writing you or forms of writing you want to articulate together, is follows only the necessity of your own inner stylistic creation, aesthetic creation, conceptual creation. You know, it depends what it is that you're writing for yourself, but yeah, basically, rather than trying to compress these two objectives and write something experimental for others, you can experiment with what happens with your thought. And I think it's something like the eagle claws, that when in Kung Fu people do eagle claws, it does something strange to people. I think when you write for others, it also does something to your thought. It's not merely a pragmatic thing. On the other hand, when you pull out the stops and you work with the texture of language in a way that satisfies an inner necessity that you don't need to justify to others, something really extraordinary also happens that might actually be very valuable to other people. In fact, that's, I think, what makes the work of many poets so enduring.
Yeah. All right. I think we've got Levi up next. Am I pronouncing your name correctly, Levi?
Yes.
Or Levi?
Thank you. Someone who works primarily with sound, I want to create some essays on signals and sound cultures in the Philippine countryside. So the pitch is something like a anthropological, philosophical tourist catalog for sounds. So I'll be writing about pseudoscientific wares, speaking in tongues, 5G towers in guerrilla zones, sound-related superstitions, motorbike noise competitions, things like that. So what I want to learn about in this workshop is how to be more sharp and concise, because like Gabriel, I'm a bit of a scatterbrain too, so I want to learn how to discipline myself in writing and thinking, organizing my thoughts. Thank you.
Great.
I love the project. This is going to be so exciting. I mean, I've been thinking about noise a lot, but not necessarily acoustic noise, but more from a kind of conceptual background. But just the vistas, range of the things that you brought in with the competitions in motorbike sound, the countryside, a kind of pseudo-scientific anthropologies, and this is going to be a lot of fun. And I can see how this can be a very performative text, and it can also fall flat if it becomes simply a kind of accumulation of content that the reader then has to sort through and understand how it hangs together. So that's also an artistic choice of how you're going to make it hang together. But I think it's going to be good fun. Maybe a similar approach in terms of practice and writing exercise than what we just discussed with Antonio could be exaggerating almost the two tendencies. On the one hand, writing something that would be almost like a Wikipedia article. On the other hand, writing something that is you're interested in sound, and I presume something like noise as a kind of wider theoretical background, translating into the language that you use and the way that you concatenate all these different aspects and the resonance and reverberation between them. So it could be just by parsing these out and satisfying the need for experimentation with language. You might find that then there's less pressure on you when you write things for pitching or for publication or for, I don't know, money, for example, when people don't want to be, when people just want content rather than engage with textuality. And yeah, I think that something like that could work in this case.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, Alenka?
Thank you, and very, very nice to meet you all and to hear about your projects, and also the comments from Laura in the chat is really funny. So I'll just read to you what I've written. It might be a bit much, so I will just go ahead. I'd like to focus on a piece of writing for and with our workshop specifically that is, to me, still rather an undefined one. So I came to a notion of obsession with this piece of writing after having read a book, or plausibly more better defined as a research manuscript written by Marek Nedelka while he was in his graduate year at the Academy in Prague in 2019. And it was called National Letters, the book, and its foundational principle was simple and didactic. So 4 case studies on 4 national systems of writing scripts, which have survived this day, albeit economic, geopolitical, and often strategic necessity, legitimately advocating for complete reform and demise. And the manuscript then was composed of field study and meticulous archival research and testimony work. And I had finished consuming this manuscript aboard a sailing vessel in the Barents Sea at the time in the Arctic. I had spent a month there of meditation and isolation aboard this insane research residency aboard this tall ship. And I had become quite entrenched in the idea of cumulating and kind of stabilizing my artistic practice as a whole. Me as well, coming to the brink, basically, of my own academic diploma in a very different institution, in the exact same model of social writing. And so therefore, I'd like to begin this book in this workshop together, a book that is to be a research atlas, basically, containing my own and others' writings. And specifically, I'd like to look at alternative accounts of computation. And I have not entirely come to terms with how to formulate this interest, but I'd say it has to do with this notion of entanglement of history, culture, and cognition. And I'm very excited about this somehow, excited to an extent that I have been also very fragile and delicate about my methodology and research and my articulation and editing and so on. And so this is what I'd like to work on together, actually, specifically the introduction and formal proposal for this piece and pitching and so on. And yeah, that's it.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Ilinka. Yeah, I think it's gonna be good to try and find a way in that draws a focus around it. Right now, it's true that for me, for instance, I got a little bit lost on is it a book that you want to write? Is it an atlas that contains that is visual in nature, in the sense that you want to kind of map different research areas, or do you want other people to contribute to this book? Who would be your readership?
So yes, it would be a book, basically, and it would be, for me, this is kind of what I'm trying to piece together, is what I'd like principally would be to create a book that would in itself contain different strands of research and would kind of act as a form of a manual or as a form of case study in the sense.
Maybe just one question. When you say research, without saying what you're researching, usually that's a kind of arts background, right? That's just kind of artistic research, meaning there is no kind of boundary or limit to what can become the object of research.
Yes, basically. So also, which is probably very important to mention, I am studying at a fine arts institution and have kind of, so my main point of study basically is then, I'd say, I mean, now I'm a bit at the intersection of new media, cognition, computation, artificial intelligence, machine learning, and so on. So this also comes into play. Yeah.
Good. Yeah, we can talk more about this. It seems to me that it's a phenomenon also more recently with the introduction of art PhDs, which has encouraged people to develop their own often visual practice, although not always just visual practice, by expanding this other side of it, which would be research for PhD. Except that you don't do research in the arts at all, the same way that you do it in molecular biology, for instance. And it seems to me that it has something to do with the fact that on the one hand, like philosophy, it's a form of asking yourself a meta question, not what is scientific research, because that's not what artists are doing or even interested in. In fact, artistic research that happens at the interstice with the scientists, going into the lab, for instance, working alongside artists, often has to do with rendering esoteric what the scientists render exoteric. So if the scientist has to be explicit about every single step they take in a research project, the artist actually renders these opaque in such a way that the viewer has to figure out for themselves, how does this change the way that I see the world, hear the world, put knowledges together. So it has something to do, like philosophy, with a meta stance to say what is research? What is research in the arts, rather than what is the object of research? On the other hand, it doesn't do it like philosophy either, because you're not going to come up with a theory and dogmas about what learning is and what the content of learning should be. So I think perhaps that's something to think about, is to try and put your finger on what is this emergent phenomenon of talking about research in art? How does it connect with what artists have always been doing, which is to, develop a problem that becomes characteristic of their practice? And on the other hand, why is this now an explicit phenomenon? Why do people sign up for artistic research programs? What are the other socio-political, socio-economic factors that come into play? Yeah, so just some ideas maybe to think about.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So shall we have another 25 minutes before ending?
We have one more person, Constantin.
Oh yeah, and then okay.
And then we will go into our explanation of the last of the assignment.
Oh,
Okay,
we have,
thank you.
Okay, so we had only 19 people. I thought we were going to be 30.
No, we're good.
Is that amazing? So how come we only, because a lot of people actually left already and weren't presenting. Okay,
Sorry, excuse me. I also didn't go.
Oh,
Would
I
love
didn't see you.
to.
I'm so sorry. Yes, okay.
No
Is
worries.
there anybody else who hasn't, other than Konstantin, who else hasn't spoken yet? Wait, Chaya, hey, hello again,
and
Chaya.
Hannah, yeah. Okay, so we will hear from those people who haven't gone, and
Who was the last person to speak? Who just said you haven't spoken yet?
there's Koi and Hannah and Exiana, and Konstantin was just about to speak because they said they had to go. So
okay.
oh, and Laura. Did we hear from Laura?
Did you speak, Laura? Oh
We
yeah,
didn't.
no, I just saw your comment, but
Yeah, we
Laura,
didn't.
you haven't
We
spoken
didn't.
yet, yeah?
Yeah, we
So
didn't hear from Laura yet either. Sorry. So we do need to hear from a few more people.
I think it's gonna be fine, and then maybe we skip the break. We were planning to
No,
have
no, we are not having a break. We end at 12:30, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
we're
yeah.
in 25 minutes, and if we run over 5 minutes or so, it's okay. I know that the new center, because they archive their sessions, we have to kind of stick to the time of.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
on the other hand, we've haven't recorded the full session, so if we go 5-10 minutes over, I think that should be fine. If there's still questions at the end. So,
Okay.
is it Konstantin? Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you. So I'm writing my graduation paper for the history of philosophy degree that I'm completing right now. And so the scope of it is much broader, at least in terms of the page limit, than what's outlined for this course, which is, I believe, 10 pages. So I say this to mitigate some concerns about maybe the scope of the abstract that I'm gonna read.
Thank you.
Yes, so the abstract is Hegel's political claims always attract more suspicion as regards self-censorship and esoteric writing than other parts of his doctrine, which is most exemplified by the now well-established division between left and right Hegelians. To test the claim that Hegel makes in his historical political writings, namely that the history has effectively ended in some ultimate way in 1806, the Battle of Jena, I'm gonna subject this claim to a kind of field test by the following triangulation, namely thinking in between the triangulation between Hegel, Heidegger, and Adam Smith. Adam Smith, in this way, is an interesting precursor to Hegel, who writes shortly before Hegel in the middle of 18th century. So he would be in Hegel's within Hegel's judgment about the end of history, still living before the end of history in some important capacity. And Heidegger, as a kind of paragon of existentialist ethics developed in the beginning of 20th century, would be an example of how one thinks of ethics and morals after the end of history. So I'm trying to think about the decisive difference between Heidegger's and Smith's theories of decision, namely with the accent and with the primary focus on how they think about subjective affect. So Heidegger's existentialist ethics stresses the importance of so-called moods, Stimmungen, which have a kind of impersonal and pre-linguistic character. And at the same time, the kind of prescriptive aim is what Heidegger calls authenticity. Adam Smith, in contrast, develops an idea of moral sentiments, which have intrinsically articulable nature, yet the corresponding normative claim being appropriateness, which basically corresponds to a kind of lack of social disruption or flattening of social differences. By examining these two theoretical strands, I arrive at a more nuanced assessment of the Hegelian concept of the end of history and its historico-philosophic importance and correctness. And so, besides that abstract, I'm really trying to think in terms of methodology of writing. I'm curious how to think about the relationship between kind of verbalized speech and writing, because I come from a very seminar-based kind of way of studying history of philosophy. And so mostly I come up with ideas in conversation one way or another. And so it is a big concern for me, it seems, to translate that into writing, because it seems like the degrees of specificity differ significantly in those two ways of expression. And yeah, primarily the translation of verbal into written for me is a big kind of central question, which I've not yet, I guess, unfolded for myself enough.
Love that question. And I love that question, and I'd actually encourage you to hold on to it as a strength maybe rather than an obstacle, because ideally written work is a part of conversation and comes from conversation and adds to conversations. So I definitely understand the problem you're grappling with, but I would also encourage you to see it as a strength rather than a problem.
That was my initial reaction as well. One of the things that's interesting about academic writing is when people read their papers in conferences, especially in philosophy, which is eminently a performance of rhetorics, but it's never written like it's going to be a performance. But even when you write not for a conference where you're going to speak it, you write it for another kind of performance because your reader performs the text in their own mind. Usually in their own, everybody has, without realizing, a voice with which they read, and maybe it changes over time. It's not something that we often become conscious of. But this thinking of your writing as something that's performed in the mind of the other is perhaps a bridging, a bridge. One of the problems you often encounter with people who start writing academically at the very beginning is bringing colloquialisms into writing that seem out of place. And in fact, I mean, unless it's what you're doing, and for example, you want to work on dialects and you introduce dialects, and that's totally legitimate. But if it's not done deliberately, it is a form of inappropriate language for formal discourse. However, still thinking, if you like, from a scenographer's or theater director's point of view, what would it look like? Just imagining the reader as the mental space being the kind of stage on which your voice, your thinking is being performed in their own mind. It could be a way of bridging this idea, on not thinking that it has to be something other than this seminar dialogical type of engagement. In fact, the best texts you find in philosophy are those that are able not only to expose two different points of view on one argument, but that do it in a way. I mean, the Platonic dialogues are one example. They're highly theatrical, but they do it in a way that is actually engaging, like you believe both points of views. So yeah, I think this is something interesting to be working on. I also think this is a great strength if you're coming from a more orally strong practice towards writing.
Yeah. Let's hear from Hannah.
Hello. Thank you everyone I loved hearing all the projects so far. I'll just read the notes that I wrote. My project is loosely informed by the character of the mermaid without ever explicitly mentioning this mythic being. The character represents a liminal figure who straddles worlds, finding ways to survive contemporary earthly reality while maintaining a connection to a realm which could symbolize the subconscious and emotionality. I'm also thinking of water's connection to ritual and religious practices, and as used in literature as a divide between the living and the dead, as in the river Styx, or a well that one drinks from to erase memories in order to move on to another life, or the inverse of drinking or submersing oneself in water in order to receive knowledge, healing, or purification. The subject of water and memory also conjures Christina Sharp's In the Wake, in thinking about the material connection of water and bodies of people during the transatlantic slave trade, which also conjures for me the perilous water travels of today's refugee crisis. And then there's the violence on bodies of water and bodies that live in and around water from an ecological standpoint. So the mermaid for me also represents marginality and someone who is learning new systems and languages in order to survive, and someone who is capable of switching modalities. And in parallel, I'm researching technical language used by governments and corporations, taking terminology from legal texts or texts laying out rules and regulations, including those of the military or intelligence services. So I'm buttressing these sometimes somewhat vague, abstract, sometimes threatening languages with imagery and language that is more magical or related to spirituality, aspects of shamanism or healing practices. And the results so far, which sort of surprised me, is somewhat sci-fi, somewhat surreal. And the format is poetry, sometimes prose poems, sometimes lineal verse. And ultimately, I see it as an experimental audiovisual project. So yeah, that's what I'll say about that.
Really beautiful. Does this also come from a arts background, or do you want to do like poetry or
Yeah, I'm
prose?
coming from an arts and critical theory background, and I also write poetry. Yeah, and also have been involved with sort of experimental performance involving literary collaborations, and I read also. I do readings sometimes. Yeah.
Great.
The
So are we
poem-
thinking,
sorry.
are you thinking like one long poem? Is this like a long form mermaid poem?
Yeah, I mean, maybe I hope I got a bit nervous that I maybe misunderstood what was meant by long form writing. I mean, I'm thinking of it as a long form poetry project
Yeah,
that
yeah,
is
yeah.
intended
Great.
to be, yeah, maybe more experimental film series, but
Great.
I'm not getting
Great.
there yet. I think right now I'm just in the writing stage, and I'm not sure how that would translate to film and video, but
Oh,
yeah.
cool. But ultimately a film and video project. Yeah.
Do you think there's a chance you might submit this as something visual as well?
Perhaps, yeah.
I
Yeah,
think that would be awesome.
Yeah.
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 It's a really beautiful
Yeah.
way of dealing with super contemporary urgent issues and the violence around it and the language around it and subverting that. Yeah, it's beautiful. I look forward to it. It's a very good pitch, certainly, because I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. All right, let's hear from Laura.
Hi.
Hi.
I guess I should also preface by saying that my background is originally in the arts as well. But I've also completed an MA in philosophy, and now I'm in a second research-based, like research master's in philosophy. But because of that, I guess part of my motivation for taking this course is to get more comfortable doing non-academic writing and doing writing that's not about philosophy or the history of philosophy, and maybe to try to find ways to like weave some theory or some philosophical readings I've done into more accessible and personal texts without them being very heady or theoretical themselves. But I had a couple different projects in mind for this course, but I guess I wanted to present the one that seemed like the farthest from academic writing and maybe the most personal, which I think would take the form of a personal essay, maybe complemented by some visual materials and family documents. So it would be a piece that's kind of about myself, my father, and my grandfather, inspired by a whole bunch of different documents that I've received in the past year or so. One was a box of photos I received from my dad of his childhood growing up in New York, in basically the 40s. He's quite old. He's about 90 now. So there's some sort of urgency time-wise to me completing any kind of project about that family history, which was part of the motivation. But I guess I was really struck by these photos because he's always been kind of private and austere about his childhood and family history. And these were just kind of showing me a side of his youth that seemed like far more relatable to me than my relationship with him as an adult has been, in which he was like smoking cigarettes in Washington Square Park and like traveling in Europe and at the beach with girlfriends and things like that. but I've always known him as a pretty like serious and stern guy. And then the other document I received came from a cousin of mine, and it was something written by my father's father on the occasion of like a family reunion in the 90s. And it was about his own life and like leaving a Jewish city in Poland after nearly being killed in a pogrom, and immigrating to the US and starting a business in refrigeration and doing all this kind of like classic Eastern European Jewish immigrant stuff in New York. And I just like was really struck by the different realities that my grandfather was living compared to my dad, who grew up in New York and went to a big American university and like ended up working in film, and like just this gap in maybe relatability between the two of them. And then the final document I received was something my dad gave me in response to my kind of talking to him about having a little bit of a creative or existential crisis myself. And he gave me a letter he had written to his dad when he was in college. And I think he gave it to me without really rereading it. But I read through it, and then like a lot of what he was saying really resonated with me. And it seemed like he was in a program for one thing and a bit bored by it and seemed to have more creative or intellectual ambitions. He seemed to be alluding to like having been hospitalized for psychiatric issues in his teens, which would have been a pretty big deal, I think, in the 40s. I'm not sure how commonplace that was. And like, I still haven't asked him about that specifically, but it was just interesting to go through these documents and kind of see both like really big differences between myself and my father and his father, and then also these things that made him more relatable. So I'm not really sure how to turn that into something that's interesting to other people and more than just like a diaristic exploration. But I think it could be a kind of interesting opportunity to do a little bit of reading and research about psychoanalysis and about inherited trauma and intergenerational trauma and that sort of thing. And, you know, it's also looking at these photographs with my dad has been like a really interesting way to relate to him when his memory is kind of going, and it's sometimes hard for him to focus on long conversations now. So I do feel that there's a little bit of time sensitivity about doing something with these materials if I would like to. And I'm not really sure how to fit that into this course, which seems to be like more argumentative and research-based writing, but it's
No, this fits
maybe it could
very
be a good fit.
Yeah, this is a good fit for sure. I think that in terms of figuring out how it becomes interesting to other people, I mean, I think it's I think that are you recording the conversations that you're having with your dad about it?
I
Have you-
haven't, but I've thought about that. I've also thought about like, you know, he himself worked in film and he has a lot of old film equipment. I don't have any experience as a filmmaker, but I've thought of just like buying a camera, and even for my own like documentation of him explaining who people are in photographs, maybe being able to film him talking about things that he's showing me. And yeah, sure.
Sorry, I'm super aware of time
Sorry.
review for Koi and Pichaya. Was there another person?
No,
Or is
those were the remaining people.
Koi and Pichaya, yeah. But I think this is a totally the right kind of topic for this workshop. And I just wanted to say I edited a book by a Bermudan poet called Andra Simmons, where the women played a role of mediating history. And at the same time, it's a super personal journey too, because it's both a coming of age, it's a queer book, and it is also a book about, you know, the transatlantic slave trade, the constitution of a people in Bermuda. So I don't know if that might be something interesting for you to read I mean, you don't want to necessarily do poetry. It's also not a straight up poetry book because that's not what the publishers wanted. But there are ways of I mean, a few things are more interesting for other people to read than biographies and life history. The extent to which you want to render this straight up as an interesting biographical kind of book or short story or I don't know, you need to probably decide about the format and length of the text.
A reported memoir. It might be a reported memoir with your interviews and your reflections, and we'll see. But we should definitely hear from the other people too. Koi.
Thank you, Laura.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Laura.
Yes. So I came from a background of new media arts and technologist, and personally, I'm very interested in the topic of intersection of technology artifacts and imagination. For example, like when camera technology first came out, like people think that camera will like steal soul since it captured this like really distorted image and pictures, and I'm very curious about like what's, for example, like artificial intelligence will bring to the society about like the imagination stuff. So an ongoing project of me is like by collecting this like mode urban legends that we are seeing all of the fear, anxiety, and hope of a techno-futuristic imagination. And why I'm like wanna attend for like some writing classes is like I feel by doing like new media arts, I'm kind of wanna like re-navigate and express some new ways for me to communicate besides like the visual or the technology parts of the practice. Like how can I like communicate like my thoughts in a more like like supplemental way for the art practice. And yeah, and I'm very interested in like, but I'm very curious about like the ways how to like structure or like what is the intersection between like art research or like anthropology research, and how can like construct something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, wonderful. This is also coming from practice and developing a linguistic practice. We'll probably discuss what it is that you want to do with the text. Is it for applying for funding, for example? Is it because you're interested in language as a medium, the same way that the other technologies that you're using is an artistic medium for you? So these are ideas that you need to probably make clearer to yourself, and then we'll work on this 100%.
Yeah, great. So
yeah.
I just want to apologize to everybody. We won't run over in the future. We will be more disciplined. We didn't really know how this was going to be. We were a little surprised by how many people were in the workshop. So I just want to say, in case people have like a hard departure like at 12:30, which is 1 minute from now, I'm going to just explain quickly the pitch assignment, and then we can hear from Pichaya and Ixiana. Yep. So do stay and hear those pitches if you can, but if you have a hard out, of course we understand. So quickly, your assignment for next time is to build on what we just did. What you just did was you wrote a little explanation of your project. You are going to transform that into a pitch. A pitch is a persuasive piece of writing to convince someone to publish, fund, or otherwise institutionally embrace your project. The reason for this is not that we're forcing you to publish, not that we're forcing you to skip over the introspective journey that you are going on with this project or anything like that. The reason is that doing that forces you to look at it in a communicative way and to start thinking about how your project fits into the world. It's very important often, most of the time, to think about that from the outset. And so we're kind of forcing you to think about it this way, and that does not mean that we're forcing you to immediately pitch your project. It's a thinking exercise. So some of the things that a pitch should cover are who is the audience or readership? Some of the other things to think about are where or how do I envision publishing this? Why does it make sense for them? What kind of work do they usually publish? How does my work fit in? What kind of conversation am I entering with this work? Why does this piece matter? Most crucially, what is the argument I'm making, or what is the story I am telling? Why am I the right person? And by this, I mean not along, you are all such impressive, interesting people. This isn't really for a summary of that, your impressive qualifications, but about why you should write this particular work. And we definitely heard some of that today. I have been making things since I am a little kid. That is a really good one sentence why you should write this particular work, right? What are the logistics? So this is important too. Is your project feasible? Why is your project feasible? Sometimes, because the project is about my 90-year-old father and I visit him often. That is why that project is feasible, right? If key people have agreed to be interviewed, if you have access to a particular archive, it is about a certain place and you are living there. That's sort of what we mean by feasible. So those are the kinds of questions you want to address in a pitch, but most saliently, what is it? What is the argument? What is the story? Why are we and what is the why? Why is this important? And we'll talk a lot more next time when we have the pitches. We will talk a lot more about what makes a pitch good, what makes an idea good. But this, I just wanted to get that is the assignment for next time. So I wanted now just close with the pitches the intros we haven't heard yet. Pichaya, I don't see you on the screen, but are you here?
I am here.
Great.
Thank you so much, everyone. It's way beyond time. I'm going to read it real quick. Yeah, I have been
No
working.
rush. We're all good. We have the full time left for you two, and awesome. So happy.
Yeah, we're only a couple minutes over.
Nice to be in your class again. I have been working on a research project for a few years, which I would summarize as the concept of learning elsewhere. This project explores how to take knowledge from traditional settings. In my case, as a curator, a museum, and apply it beyond its walls. It's an effort to bridge the complexity of concepts, ideas, and different realities with the simplicity of everyday life. I have self-published 2 volumes of a review called Beyond Review, where I compile my reflections on art, design, architecture, culture, and theories related to this concept. The inspiration for this came from Martin Heidegger's essay, Building, Dwelling, Thinking, Currently, in addition to a PhD proposal, I am focusing on critical spatial literacy. I am working on a writing project titled Tourists Like Us, which explores sight writing, a concept developed by Jane Rendell, a professor at the Bartlett School of Architecture in the UK. I am seeking ways to intertwine writing, semantic, and creative language to communicate the complexity of the site. I'm interested in writing as a medium that transcends disciplinary boundaries with a strong emphasis on its transnational and transmedial dimensions. In this class, beyond honing various writing skills, I am to cultivate narratology, persuasive and original thought by developing and articulating raw ideas, particularly in site descriptions that integrate phenomenological insights with rational analysis. Yeah, that's it.
Wow, that's really beautiful.
Yeah. Thank you, Pichaya.
Thank you.
And last but not least, Exiana. Am I pronouncing that right? I'm sure I'm not.
Just to say one word perhaps to Pichaya.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
I know that we have 2-3 minutes only left, but Pichaya, we can also come back to it, and you can also write to me on the side.
For sure.
No problem. I understand. Thank you.
Comment, but I think one of the things that didn't come out clearly to me is what format of writing you will be envisaging or starting on in this workshop. But what format of writing? Is it going to be another book, or is it going to be finding a type of communication in the museum that kind of bridges the different types of audiences and the inside and outside? And yeah, so that unfortunately we won't have time to discuss it now, but you're also very welcome to email me separately. But just for your pitching, I think that's something to bear in mind, is what is the what type of output, what is going to be the form into which you pour these ideas.
Yeah, great questions to think about, especially for the pitch. Yeah. All right, Exiana?
Yeah. Thank you for listening to this after the long day still. I find it hard to identify a single project to write about. I tend to write in fragments, to collect segments, to build stratifications of thoughts. While I'm quite structured as it comes to writing essays or critical text on fellow artists, a remarkable lack of organization pertains my reflective writing. At the moment, I'm thinking of at least 3 to 4 different writing projects.
Okay, let's hear one, and we can hear about the others as we go.
Actually, only one of them could be described as a purely writing project, and this would be an editing of a specific agglomerations from my past poems to create a poetry book or poetry collection. The other projects are at the convergence of my writing and artistic practice. They are all quite connected. The first one aims at exploring the intersection of static and moving images and to connect them through a potential dramatization of a part of my artistic process relating to themes of motherhood and state-inflicted violence. And the second project, which is equally at the intersection of writing and visual arts, addresses the spaces of lamentation, started with the historical, both in art history and literature representation, to investigate the contemporary visualization that comes through the media. And certainly, I mean, the most pressing project would be the accomplishment of sections for my PhD thesis, which is titled Casting a Shadow on Disappearance, Emptiness, and the Haunting Power of Absence, where I'm also keen to opt for a less academic writing in favor of a sort of autoethnographic kind of approach. So I think, I mean, what I hope to get out of the class would be to understand how to place myself in conversation and in response to the writers and artists who have preceded me in research, which are like liminal to what I'm doing. So how to make sense also of the impossibility to have a full and comprehensive knowledge of each one of them, and how to properly acknowledge while still maintaining the singularity of my position. Yeah.
Fantastic questions. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll probably have to discuss of the different types of writing practices that you have going on concurrently, which one it is that you want to foreground in order to produce writing throughout. And I'm kind of thinking maybe you don't need to, maybe you can I mean, you can use the workshop to experiment with different styles of writing and pushing different aspects of your writing and then seeing how you can put them together. But on a practical level, because with these super wide margins of play, it's a higher risk of getting lost a little bit. So I want to know, your PhD is in what subject? Is it anthropology? Is it art? Is it...
No, it's in artistic research.
Artistic research. Okay, well, then you have by default a wide margin of play. We already mentioned this earlier. But likewise, I would say that it's very important for you to understand what it is that you mean by research in and with your artistic practice. Is it a form of art writing that goes alongside your practice? Is it like two concurrent artistic practices, an engagement with text and an engagement with other media? Or is it meant to be a form of rendering explicit stakes and problems that are implicit in your other work? So this is something that you're going to have to probably think about in what you want to do. So yeah.
I find that often the pitch is a kind of a structure test of which project you want to do right now. You know, so this very assignment of putting together a pitch and arguing for an idea, I think should help you to figure out which to focus on right now. You know, if you find that as you put one together, it's maybe not gelling or coming together, so try one of the others, right? And see which one comes together best in time for the class next session. And I think that will be a good way of sorting it out. It has been so... Did we miss anybody? No, we didn't. I can see everyone. Okay, great. It's been so exciting to meet you all. And I'm really looking forward to next session.
Likewise, every single one of your presentations is something that made me look forward to the next sessions and to discovering your work and how you go about it. And I have to say also the pleasure of seeing the rolling forward of other projects that I've already been engaging with a little bit through the other seminars. But awesome, really looking forward to it. Thank you so much for playing ball and for participating in this and for bearing with us, because effectively we're trying to figure out how to have such a large group in an online workshop where everybody needs to also be able to participate actively. So
yeah,
we're working it out.
Yeah, well, yeah, we will. Yeah, we are learning on the fly, and thank you all for rolling with it so well. See you next time.
Thanks so much.
Bye.
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 Thank you. Bye.